Do you feel stuck as a pre-med trying to figure out how to navigate the journey into medical school? Well, today I have a phenomenal guest with me. His name is Khalid El-Jack. He's a fourth-year medical student, and he is going to share all about his tips and strategies that help propel him into medical school and now to being a fourth-year student who recently matched into an ophthalmology program. Let's jump right into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Black Med Connect podcast, affectionately known as the B-Med podcast, where we share inspiring stories of Black physicians and physicians in training. And today I am delighted to have my guest with me. His name is Khalid El-Jack. He's a fourth-year medical student at Perelman School of Medicine in Pennsylvania. And we are absolutely delighted to have you here to share more about your story. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weiss.
Absolutely. So I should be calling you future Dr. El-Jack, of course, because I'll let you share with the audience what the good news is.
Yeah, I have had the pleasure to recently match into the field of ophthalmology, which has been a field I've been looking to get into for a while. And thankfully, I'll be actually moving to sunny South Florida, the University of Miami this summer.
Awesome. Congratulations. That's
Thank you so much.
Commended. That is absolutely to be commended. So you mentioned that you've had this dream of being an ophthalmologist for quite some time. Tell me more. How did you get interested in that field? And share a little bit with the audience who may not even know what ophthalmologists are.
Yeah, so I came into medical school in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, without a specific specialty in mind. I just knew that I wanted to pursue kind of a procedural specialty, but I knew that the field that I wanted to pursue, I wanted it to have an element of being able to do global health in that field. Originally, my family's from Khartoum, Sudan, and that's like a community that's been a huge role in my life. I used to visit Sudan a lot as a child. So when I went further on in medical school, I found that ophthalmologists can fairly easily go on global trips, be able to do these quick procedures, vision-changing procedures, and really impact quality of life. And that's kind of what pushed me into that field. And for those that aren't necessarily familiar with the work that ophthalmologists do, they're specifically eye surgeons. A lot of common ophthalmology procedures are like cataracts, LASIK, patients with glaucoma, or patients with diabetes can have vision-threatening eye conditions as well. And there's a lot of different subspecialties in ophthalmology.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love how you talked about, coming in during the pandemic and how your desire and passion for global health is a big reason why you chose ophthalmology. Share more about how you hope to kind of impact the global community with your work as you proceed into residency here soon in July.
Yeah, I think long-term, there's two main ways of thinking of global health. Number one is actually physically going abroad and working with communities abroad. And of course, ideally, I would love to go to Sudan and work with patients there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of civil unrest at this time in Sudan, so it's quite difficult to physically go. But hopefully, as we think of after training and in the future, it would be an honor to be able to serve that community in Sudan. The other avenue of doing global health is actually right here at home, especially in a lot of major cities. I'm in Philadelphia currently, we'll be in Miami. There are communities from all around the world in major cities. So sometimes people think global health is just you have to get on an airplane and treat a patient abroad. But it really starts with treating immigrant communities in your own home city, developing networks for them to get eye screenings, if they need surgeries after the screenings or medications. Those are all ways you can serve a global community in training even.
Absolutely. I love that. I genuinely don't think people understand how much we take care of patients from diverse backgrounds all over the world right here, and what the needs of specific communities are and how they're different. Yeah. And so, as much as we're all very much so the same humanity wise, I think it's important to know that when people come from different locations worldwide, it's nice to know that they have communities and individuals that want to make sure that their needs are met based on their backgrounds.
Yeah, exactly.
And so could you share a little bit more about what the process was like. Let's say you're a first year. I'm actually going to go back even further.
Sure.
Let's say you're a pre-med, hence the pre-med here. Let's say you're a pre-med in college and you think you may want to be an eye surgeon one day, an ophthalmologist. What advice would you have? What are 3 tips you would give to a student who may be thinking about this as a career choice for them?
Yeah, I think going back to pre-med, I think my first tip is to kind of think of things as one step at a time. I think it's easy to be your freshman year of college, you just turn like 17, 18, you move to a new city and you're like, oh, one day I want to be an eye surgeon. And you think about like this overwhelming burden of, okay, now I have to like skip all these steps, go through residency, and eventually I'm going to be an eye surgeon. So tip 1, I would say, is like, what is the immediate step in front of you? So the immediate step in front of you as a pre-med student is like, okay, I have to get into med school. So there's a whole series of events that have to take place from pre-med to med school before you can jump through like hoops number 2 and 3 to get to eye surgeon. The second tip I would say that's going to be helpful even within med school would be to find the right mentors. So you're doing a good job by like watching videos like this, getting information, but to find a correct mentor for you to kind of help guide you through pre-med, through med school, and then to get into like the ophthalmology residency, and even within residency, like to become an attending physician, you need to find mentors that are going to advocate for you and kind of give you the best advice moving forward. And then I think 3, if I'm going to think about like pre-med specifically, it's going to be very important to try. Everybody says like protect your grades, do the best academically, but frankly, like I wouldn't advise people to get overwhelmed with their end goal and then kind of mess up like the original pathway. So without that in mind, it's going to be difficult to even like go from like the pre-med stage to the med school stage. So like really focusing on, even though there's a lot of extracurriculars and everything you have to fit in, really making sure that you have like as strong grades as possible, as strong test scores as possible for yourself.
I love that. I think, as you do talk to a lot of pre-meds, and I do as well, the tips you just gave are extremely important, because I think when you've had a lifelong dream, or even if it's a newer goal that you develop in college, it's really easy to almost get overwhelmed because the path is so great. And so to your point of like keeping the main thing, keeping your grades as the, priority, making sure you're paying attention to the steps you need to for the immediate future, that semester, I think is really critical. And then your second tip regarding mentorship is huge. So can you share a little bit about maybe a college mentor you had? And then even if in med school now, if you have some mentors, like what did you do to find them, and why has it been beneficial for you to have mentors?
Yeah, I have been very fortunate that a lot of my mentors, especially in college, med school, they've been more like academic professors and people within my med school. Within college, I was lucky to have a strong network of peer mentors, so students that actually were just only 2 years older than me, 3 years older than me. And they actually didn't even go to my undergrad. As I mentioned, I come from a Sudanese background. So I grew up in Wisconsin, and a lot of these mentors, 2 of them in particular, grew up in Michigan. So these are people I've been childhood friends with, but they were a couple years older than me, and they had gone through pre-med, and like they successfully actually made it to medical school. So I depended on them greatly. They were like people who were lock and step with me as I was going through pre-med to try to make sure that I could get to that next level. And I would say that sometimes it's better to even have, it's not mutually exclusive. Like you don't just need either peer mentors or professors, but I think having had both, having peer mentors is a lot easier to relate to them because they're around your age. They just went through the exact same thing. They're not 20, 25 years removed from the process and then kind of giving outdated advice or advice that like might be difficult for you. So if there are people in your university, maybe they're 2 years older than you, there are like, for example, clubs like MAPS or SNMA or like other cultural diversity clubs, or even just a pre-medical club at your university. Seeing people who have gone through the exact same thing that you're going through right now, I think that's a good place to start to find peer mentors.
Absolutely. And to your point, you never really stop needing individuals to help you. So whether you're in your stage of the journey or like my stage as an early faculty member out of my training. You need peer mentors to, like you said, relate to the immediacy of what you're going through.
Yeah.
But then it's good to have those layers too. So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
love that. I love that. So you were able to have some mentors kind of in proximity to you at your university and some individuals from your community. And really, that's what BMed is all about. And so I'm going to take this moment to plug our new app that's launching soon, the Black Med Connect app, the BMed app, which is a new platform where you will be able to connect with peers and individuals at every single level. And so we're excited that we're launching this platform in March. That's right, you'll be able to download the app on Android or iOS in March. So be on the lookout for the exact drop date. And thank you to Khaled for even bringing up the importance of community, because that's what we're all about here at BMed, making sure we help you build that community. With that being said, let's talk a bit about the shy student, right? The student who they know what they want to do. I call them like quiet giants. They know exactly what they want to do, but may not be the vocal person, that outgoing person. What advice would you give to a student who may need mentors or may need peers to connect with, but they're not necessarily familiar with how to go about navigating building those connections?
Yeah, I think I would say two things. Number one, you don't have to be like, just because I'm here on this podcast speaking, it doesn't mean that I'm the loudest voice in the room or something like that. I think you just need one person who can relate to you. You don't need 100 different mentors or 100 different friends to support you through a journey. You just need a couple people that really relate to you and understand what you're interested in. So I think number one, don't be overwhelmed by the fact that you have to have hundreds of people. And then two, I would say it really is like any other thing. It takes practice. So you start reaching out, you might get overburdened by the fact that you reached out to 5 people and no one really responded to you. And sometimes people take that very personally, but that's not really a personal thing. Oftentimes the people that you're reaching out to can be quite busy, especially in medicine. So it's really about volume. You continue reaching out, you continue trying to have meetings. And even if you are shy, over time having those meetings, you kind of develop a practice and a little bit of like a thicker skin when it comes to like having opportunities that didn't necessarily work out or mentorship relationships that didn't work out. And then over time, it becomes a much easier practice. But 5 years ago or like beginning of pre-med is very different. Like I'm very different now, 8 years later, in terms of reaching out to people.
Absolutely. So you're speaking to the growth of just going through the process and really building those skills and practicing those skills. And so now let's talk a bit about your transition from being a pre-med into medicine. What was it like for you, the med school admissions process, and what was your experience like as like a first year med student?
Yeah, I think the medical school admissions process, I think it's a difficult and lengthy process for anyone. I specifically took a gap year between undergrad and med school. While I was applying, I was doing a summer research project actually here at the University of Pennsylvania. But it's a lengthy process. Like you submit the primary, you get a ton of secondaries, you have to go through interviews. At that time, when I applied, it was the last cycle of in-person interviews. So I was like traveling across the country trying to do the interviews as well. But thankfully, ultimately, I really wanted to attend the medical school that I currently attend. So I was very thankful that ended up working out for me. And then transitioning was also quite difficult because I mentioned it was right during COVID, like August of 2020. So in the beginning, it was tough moving to a new city and like not really knowing. I didn't really know. I maybe knew 2 people in the city of Philadelphia when I moved, but you find that like a lot of my classmates were in that exact same position. So we still were able to connect, and over time we were able to develop like good relationships like within our class.
Excellent. Do you feel like when you first got there in the middle of the pandemic, I know you all were pretty much so isolated. What did you guys do to try to build those connections up? And especially as a trainee from an underrepresented background historically, like how did you build those connections, and were you able to connect to your community as well there?
Yeah, I got lucky. There's a lot of intersectionality in my background. I am Sudanese, but I'm also Muslim, like of faith. So when I actually during orientation, we had to get COVID testing, and when I went to the COVID testing, I met two classmates of mine who honestly, like, I met them within 3 days of school, and
Oh,
4 years later, they're like still my absolute best friends in med school. So like literally, it just so happened that in that first week, I was able to have that connection. And in my med, I think like some people in med school have like a ton of friends. They interact with a lot of people. I thankfully already had a support system from like back home and undergrad, so I wasn't looking to make like 50 new friends. So this core community of like a handful of people, like they kind of carried me through the 4 years in med school, and they're still great friends of mine.
I love that. I love that. To your point, so many people think, oh, you got to make friends with like everybody. And
Yeah,
obviously, you want to be friendly with
yeah,
everybody.
exactly. On good
But
terms with everybody.
yeah,
But
on
yeah,
good terms with everybody, collegial. But all you need is one or two good,
yeah,
people you can really bounce ideas off of, or laugh, cry, whatever you need to do, study all night, whatever the case may be, with them.
yeah.
And so, what was your experience like, during med school? And, for individuals who may not know, it's match season. So Khaled already knows where he's going, but a lot of students are just now getting to the point where they're going to find out very, very soon where they're matching into their residency programs. So let's talk a little bit about your kind of classroom experiences and then jumping into the clinical world. What were those
Yeah.
two worlds like for you?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, one thing that definitely is apparent now going after having going through med school is that it goes by very, very quickly. I like people used to tell me that I'd be like, oh no, it's like 4 years. It's really,
It's
really
like
long.
a jerk.
But no, but honestly, like month to month, semester to semester, it's like it's just passing very, very quickly. I would say I view med school really in different stages. So like you're saying, like preclinical versus clinical versus like after the clinic, all those stages are like completely different experiences. So I would say like if we went from the beginning, my school, like the first year and a half is spent in the classroom. But for us, it was a lot of virtual work because of the pandemic. But we still had to come in to do our like small group problem-based learning. That was honestly, it felt like a more intense extension of undergrad. Like because there was a lot of classroom-based work, you have a lot of examinations, and the material comes at you pretty quickly. But after, I would say the first semester is a really big adjustment, like adjusting to the level of material. But then like when you get to year like one and you're in the organ systems and you have a system of how you're studying, then it's like, okay, this somewhat becomes manageable. And then when you transition from the books to the clerkship, that's like a whole different transition. So the clerkships, that I think was probably the most intense period of medical school because it's 1 year long. You're going from rotation to rotation. You don't like, as soon as you become familiar with one thing, like you're being transitioned to another team. At night, you have to study for your shelf exam that's coming at the end of the rotation. So definitely, I would consider that period probably the most challenging. But also, I would say probably one of the more rewarding times. You're directly interacting with patients every single day. So most of the time, you're like playing a key role actually on the team and in patient care. So I think even though the hours are longer and it's a lot more intense, it's just like a very different feeling than being in the classroom.
Agreed, absolutely. Do you feel like, I don't think people are ready for that opportunity to realize, wow, I'm a part of the care team for someone in a very stressful, tough time in their life. So
Yeah.
that transition is huge. What did you do to kind of get yourself prepared to be that student doctor on the team? How did you begin to connect or start to build up your clinical skills when you dealt with patients more?
Yeah, I think the number one skill or tip I can give for someone on their clinical rotations is to like really understand, like to have very strong like situational awareness of what's going on around you. Because sometimes as like a medical student, you think, oh, like all eyes are on me, like everyone's evaluating me, and that like we always have it from the lens of me, because that's what we're used to. You get an exam, it's only about you. Like that grade is only a reflection of your ability and your scores. When you get to the clinical rotations, yes, you're being evaluated. Yes, you're on a team, but at the end of the day, like everything that's going on is to take care of a person. So over time you develop that like situational awareness where it's like, oh, I have extra time, maybe I could talk more to the patient. I could understand like what are the reasons they're not able to take these medications? What are the reason like they're here the second or third time? Like these are things that your resident or your attending may not have the time to do for every patient, but you sometimes, or like somebody might say like the patient might be hungry and you might think, oh, like that might be beneath me to like go do something, but it's absolutely not. Like you can you can like change someone's whole day just by listening to them, getting them some food, sitting there for like an extra 5 minutes. Like that ability to understand the situation, that's something that I think develops over time, but is really, really important.
I love that you said that. I love that you said that you can spend 5 more minutes with the patient and it can change their whole day. Because
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. I think as you go through each stage, your responsibilities change. And so as the student, you have the most opportunity to just learn freely and contribute in a way that, to some extent, it's very helpful for the patient, but like for the resident or the attending, there are required things that must get done.
Yeah.
And so I love that insight and that advice to like have that situational awareness and look for the spots where you as a med student can be extremely valuable. It's funny. I remember having the opportunity to just talk with a patient as a med student about their family and about their upbringing. And and most people know, like your doctor may ask you a few questions about your family or your upbringing, but it's oftentimes because they need to make sure it's well documented and make sure it's not related to why you're there versus just wanting to learn and understand more about your patient.
Yeah.
So that's a great point that you bring up, to have situational awareness. So if you watch the entire episode, then we have a special bonus for you. So Khaled, I'll let you share what that bonus is with our audience.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Weiss. We're giving away our pre-med guide that we've created. So this is a 24-page guide created by me, my classmate, and the Med School Bro team. Specific highlights in it, we have a MCAT study schedule in there. We have my own personal statement that I applied to medical school with. We also have an example of medical school secondary that I used to apply to medical school, and screenshots of my activity section used to apply to medical school. And finally, there is a template letter for sending out research opportunities to professors. So if you're ever confused on how to reach out, we've got you covered on that.
I love that. I love that. So thank you all for watching, and definitely click on that resource. And I want you to comment Med School Bro down below so we can make sure you get that resource. And if you want to check us out, I got a few things I need you to do. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Black Med Connect. You can listen to us on all podcast platforms. So if you're walking or if you're studying or need some motivation, you can listen to us on all podcast platforms, or you can check us out on YouTube and subscribe there. And if you haven't followed us on social media, check us out on Instagram, TikTok, anywhere where you like to kind of check out social media. We're there as Black Med Connect as well. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode, part 1 with Khaled. He is a 4th-year student who really just gave us some really great gems on how to navigate through your pre-med journey and your early years in medical school. If you enjoyed this episode, then you'll absolutely enjoy part 2, where we also share more tips and strategies on how to navigate the med school journey and his exciting endeavor with Med School Bro to make sure to build community for those who are trying to get into med school. So if you're excited about that and you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to join us next week for the part 2 of our episode with Khaled. Until next time, always remember to dream without limits.